Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to be doing the supermarket shopping book tag created by Jason Harrigan of Byways in Bookland, and I was tagged by Sean D. Standfast. So I will be linking both down below. List. So prompt number 1 is list. Before you go book shopping, including virtually, do you have a list? So normally when I go book shopping virtually, I do have a list. It's called my wish list. So on my Amazon account, I have 2 bookish wish lists. The primary wish list, and then I have one called research, which originally what I would do was I would add nonfiction, mostly history, books for research that I would then, instead of buying, I would go to my local library. If they had the books, I'd check them out. If they didn't, I would interlibrary loan them. Now, in the past year or so, I've gotten into the habit of buying them as well as the books in my wish list. And if you watched my Thursday video, I went on a little, I guess, checkup of my Alibris TBR, or my Alibris wish list. And so I have a pretty good sized wish list there. It's about 325. I knocked a few books out when I went through about 20 or so books, and then I ordered some yesterday. Anyway, so yeah, I also have a wish list on Book Depository. I haven't quite set one up yet for Fabled or Book People yet. Although I basically could just use my Amazon one, and then anyway. Now when it talks about grocery, now when I go physically to a bookstore, I try to have a list. I will have a list of books that I would like. Originally, I would use a piece of paper that would just list some books on. Now I've started doing it on my phone. But the bookstores I tend to go to, I haven't physically gone to a new a bookstore that sells new books and ages. I pretty much just buy all of that virtually. But I have gone to used bookstores, Golden's Book Exchange in Waco a few months ago, and then the Friends of the Library book sale. I will have a list and try to find the books that are on the list. They very rarely have what I want, so I will just basically, the Friends of the Library book sale or Golden's will provide, to quote Steve Donahue, or borrow from Steve Donahue. He says the bridal will provide. Now when it comes to grocery shopping, I don't really have a list when I actually like buying food, because I pretty much buy the same thing over and over. If I'm making a special recipe or trying a new recipe or something like that, I'll vary what I buy, but it's pretty consistent every 2 weeks. Also, I buy my groceries virtually, so yeah. Okay, prompt number 2. Getting into the store itself now. Fruit and veg. Good for the body and mind. Recommend a book that you felt improved your physical or mental health, I don't really have one for physical health. I guess you can argue like a cookbook, but that's, yeah. The results there will be varied. So instead I went with mental health. Now, if you watch Ginger Cook, she will sometimes mention that one of the best things people can do for their mental health is to paint. And in that spirit, I'm going to show one of my art books. This is Pastel Pointers by Richard McKinley. Richard McKinley is one of the most well-known pastel artist working today as a teacher, so on and so forth. I picked this book up for Christmas about 2 years ago, and I've quite enjoyed it. Had some fantastic pointers for getting into the business side of art, but also of how to improve one's artwork. So quite enjoy it. Let's go some of that art. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Really need to get more into doing some pastel, but I have too much reading and book buying. So prompt number 7, fruits and vegetables. I try to get a pretty good mix of fruits and vegetables. Probably should do a better job of it, honestly. Prompt number 3, tinned goods or canned goods. Regardless of the label on the can, the contents are all too often bland. What's your tin can genre? I'm going to go with, honestly, public policy public policy books. They don't really appeal to me, and I kind of feel they're where you should really read them deeply, particularly if you are deeply interested in contemporary news and current affairs and politics, but it's just, yeah, not terribly appealing for me. Prompt number 4, meat fish counter. Prepared by a skilled butcher or fishmonger, just how you want it. Tell us about a book you felt was written just for you. So, yeah, I think you can go to a specialized butcher or fishmonger if you're in a large city or a specialty shop. But generally, if you're going to a supermarket in the United States, most seafood is going to be prepackaged. So anyway, but a book that I felt was just for me, I honestly struggled with this one. So this is maybe a bit of a ass pull, but oh well. I'm gonna go with Big Wonderful Thing by Stephen Harrigan. This book just completely did it for me. I loved every bit of it. And I've talked about this ad nauseum on so far over the past since I've read it. So I'm not going to say much about it except for it's awesome. Prompt number 5, baked goods. Bread is a staple for many around the world. Who is an author you can easily digest at any time of the day? This one was tough. And there's another one that was found a little tough. I'm not the kind of reader where a writer or genre or anything like that, a book, will perfectly hit it for me every time. I'm incredibly critical and incredibly moody, and I will, basically it's never a guarantee whether a writer or a book will do it for me at any given time. So I'll go with the next best thing, and usually a book that I can easily get into and enjoy, I would say, is or author is Agatha Christie. There are a number of books of hers that I can just read and enjoy. And so, yeah. Although that said, I can get a bit tired of her too. I think I was reading Death on the Nile earlier this year, and I was like, not feeling it. So anyway, prompt number 6, chilled section, or yeah, it would be the dairy and the generally the private. I mean, technically the meat sections in the chilled, because in most grocery stores it's like, oh, I'm assuming, I don't know for sure. It's like the meats will start around the produce, and then it'll work its way around the store from like meats to sort of breakfast meats, lunch meats, to dairy and eggs. And then you'll get to the frozen section. Okay, so I recommend a cool new author or book you recently discovered. I'm going to go with, now this came out last year, but she's publishing a few, it's like I think every 8 months a new book in the series. So, but anyway, I'm going to go with Jenn Lyons, and this is The Ruin of Kings, which came out last year. I have the second book, The Name of All Things, and I've pre-ordered the third book, which is escaping me right now. So anyway, I quite enjoyed this book. I mean, I had some issues with it. I think it could have been better structured. I'm not entirely sure if the sort of how she's tells the story in this work carries over successfully into sequels. I really need to come back and reread this and read The Name of All Things. But anyway, but yeah, definitely I recommend. Frozen section. Tell us about a book that gave you the shivers. Here I'm going to go with a book that I've read when I was significantly younger. I really don't get scared when I read. Anywho, so I'm going to go with a book that I read when I was much earlier and that I remember making me uncomfortable towards the end. And that is Dream Boy by Jim Grimsley. I read this when I was in high school, I'm pretty sure. And I really enjoyed it, but it also deeply disturbed me. But I don't really remember much of it off the top of my head, except for it's a young man, like a high school student, who is new to this community. It takes place, I think, in the 60s or 70s, maybe a little bit 80s. And so it's this new kid. He meets a neighbor who is also a bus driver. The kid's in school with him too, or the young man's in school with him too. And then they sort of begin a relationship, and it takes a very haunting turn towards the end. Really want to come back and reread that one. Section 8, or Prompt 8, Beers, Wines, and Spirits. Name one of the first books you read that made you feel like an adult. This one is rather tough because, I mean, what really defines that? Because I remember, like, say, Agatha Christie would be considered adult literature. I was reading her when I was 12. James Bond, I was reading when I was like 14. So I'm going to go with, and this is maybe a bit of a cop-out, I don't know, but I'm going to go with Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim, which I remember strongly affecting me when I read it when I was in high school. And that, I think, made me feel significantly different than when I was reading, say, Agatha Christie or James Bond, or even, say, more adult science fiction and fantasy. So, yeah. I will go with Mysterious Skin. Sorry about that. Probably my brother telling me how the 4 children of the apocalypse are doing. Prompt number 9. Sweets, candy. What genre author is your indulgence when you need a little treat read? No, this one is tough. I mean, this one is incredibly tough. So obviously, using sweets and candy implies that these books, while enjoyable, pleasurable, delicious, are not really good for you. And that's, I mean, because I would argue, or I would contest, like, so I could say science fiction and fantasy. Well, is that really a literature that is bad for you? I mean, yeah, there is some science fiction and fantasy that can be incredibly schlocky and terrible and really bad, but then there are science fiction and fantasy that are as good as, thematically powerful, as literarily powerful as anything that literary fiction can put out. So, and really lately, the genre that has been really most consistently pleasing me has been history. And and nobody is like, that's really not bad for you. I mean, that's really great for you. So it's, yeah, so it's kind of a bit weird. Then again, I do have a tremendous sweet tooth, so maybe it's not necessarily inappropriate that my sweets candy answer would be history. Prompt number 10. The magazine stand. If you read magazines, journals regularly, share some titles with us. So there is only one magazine that I subscribe to. National Geographic. I've been subscribed to them since August, and I've quite enjoyed every issue that I've gotten. So yeah, a journal or magazine I would love to subscribe to, but I haven't gotten around to it, is the Pastel journal. This is a journal for pastel artists. It has profiles of pastelists, some how-tos. Let me see if I can find something that's really good in here. Yeah. That is just like amazing and really, really, yeah. I've been tempted to buy a subscription to the Pastel Journal for ages. Haven't gotten around to it yet. I would also love to, excuse me, and it's over here. Yeah. Like, I would love to be able to have a subscription to the American Historical Review. This is from 2005, and I've read it a few times and really enjoyed it. And this is kind of the history I like to read. So yeah, but also buying a subscription to this magazine would be insanely expensive. Anyway. And there's also, I would like to maybe get a subscription to Asimov's and Magazine of Science Fiction and Fantasy and a few others. But for now, I am quite happy with just National Geographic. I'm not going to roll back to put this up, so I'll just dump it over there. Okay, and finally, checkout. Time to go home and unpack. Tag some shoppers on their way in. So if you see this video and you would like to do the supermarket tag, please consider yourselves tagged. I will be back in a few minutes with the 80s book tag. So until then, BookTube, I will see you in a few. Stay safe.